Good morning and welcome to Fly to Freedom. Today's episode is all about empowering women. And I am super excited to have a guest, Sharon James. Sharon James is a women's circle leader and life coach. She works with women who are feeling disconnected, stuck in a rut, or have lost their sparkle, to learn to love themselves wholly and unconditionally from the inside out. With this deep self-love and unconditional acceptance of the life journey they have been on, women then become the leader in their own lives, as happier, healthier, more empowered versions of themselves from the inside out. Fully connected to their true, authentic self, it is a leadership journey, even like a pilgrimage back to themselves. Life events or not following the usual path can mean that women have lost themselves or bought into the story and conditioning that they are somehow not enough, which holds them back from their greatness. Through her Grit and Grace Women's Circles and In Shine Out coaching business, Sharon helps women see that there is another way to live their one and only life in a meaningful way through personal empowerment and connecting with their feminine leadership. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to chat to you.
Yeah, me too. Excited and nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about. Right. I got some quick fire icebreaker questions.
Okay.
So let's start with a fun one. What is your favorite sound or smell and why?
Ooh. Do you know my favorite smell is Thai food? You know, it's authentically Thai. I can't really explain it. I think it's about fish sauce or something, and it just transports me back to Thailand for my 50th birthday, one of the best times in my life. So that triggers me every time in a good way.
Oh, what a beautiful memory. I love that.
Oh.
When you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's a really great question. So first of all, I wanted to be a teacher, right? When I was about 7, I was always doing classrooms and stuff like that. But then when I went to grammar school, and I'm from Northern Ireland, if people haven't picked up the accent. So when I went there, I went to a grammar school. And I remember the careers talk, and the teacher asked me what I wanted to be. And I said, I wanted to be a beautician. And he told me, he said, Sharon, girls who go to the academy do not become beauticians. You are good at languages. You need to become a teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the irony, Julia, is in a way, In Shine Out is me kind of talking about inner beauty, and also I facilitate stuff. So I've kind of come to a meshing of those, but it was just so interesting. I never forget it. That was my careers talk.
Wow. Just giving you conditioning of what you were allowed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This is it. This is the box you need to fit into. And if you think about it, 40 years ago, but no, it's more than 40 years ago. I was 16 at that time. Just had a moment there. You know, the beauty industry wasn't the way it was now. And I didn't even know what I meant by that. I think I meant something way bigger than, than not just doing the beauty treatments. I did mean something bigger, but I had no idea what I meant. But he certainly put the lid on that and tried to get me back into my box.
Isn't it amazing how it's come round full circle, though, and you are helping women see their beauty, but the beauty within.
Absolutely. I love it.
And teaching in a way. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. That was a nice memory to go back.
Along the lines of you do or have done, what's the worst job you've ever done?
Oh, the worst job. I did a like waitressing for during school hours. I wasn't that great at it, if I was being honest, because I'd rather been sat around the table chatting to everybody. And so also I was a little bit disorganized, so my ordering wasn't great. So probably waitressing was probably the worst job I ever attempted, and wasn't good at, and decided that definitely wouldn't be for me going forward.
I did chambermaiding, which certainly opened my eyes to a lot of different aspects of life that I'd never seen before, that's for sure. But it was not something I enjoyed. What qualities do you most admire in others?
Oh, gosh, so many. But I think the quality of authenticity, because I think that takes a lot of strength to show up as your authentic self. And bravery. I think it takes bravery as well. So I do really admire strength, bravery, authenticity.
Beautiful. I totally agree with that. And it does take a huge amount of strength and bravery to show up as who you truly are, rather than who you think other people want you to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and do one thing only with it, and it can be anything, it can literally be anything at all. It can be about you, about the world, about your family, whatever you want. What would you use this magic wand to change?
Oh, that's simple. I just want everybody to learn to love themselves.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely the same. Yeah, mine would be just to bring the world to a place of self-love.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such a powerful place. So yeah, we could do that together. That'd be great.
Well, let's go on the first step right now then. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led up to you running Women's Circles? Oh, excuse the shaky dog noise. They're both in here with me.
That's okay.
Supervising.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I have to go back a bit here, but I'm not going to give you my life story. I have spent the last 30 plus years empowering the leadership in myself and others. And in others, I did it primarily, first of all, being in the corporate world and the airline industry as a leader and learning what that meant for myself and realizing, gosh, it's not a title, it's a choice. Because just because you're given the title of whatever, general manager, whatever, doesn't make you a leader. And so on that journey myself, then kind of got promoted away from what I enjoyed, which was really helping people see their full potential and the unknown potential that's in them. And that word potential for me was really important because it comes from the Latin for power, so it's potential is potente, power. So that, really mattered to me. And so I decided to set up my own self-employment practice 20 plus years ago, actually 2004, so 20 years ago. And then I just went into empowering the leadership in others. So I would run workshops, coaching, etc. And at the same time, unbeknownst to me, I headed off on a bit of a healing journey, a self-healing journey, because my childhood, growing up, for someone that grew up in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, my childhood from, that first 10 years was bliss. I was very loved. I knew I was very loved. But from I was 10 to 11 to about 21, I suffered now, which I look back, I can use the word trauma. I wouldn't have known it then. My cousin was killed. My boyfriend was killed. There was a lot of illness. My dad was ill. And I don't tell you that as a poor me story. I realized then I lost a lot of what identified me, and I went off just to get away from the pain. Because I was so identified by a lot of those things. So I went off to get away from the pain. But what I now know, looking back, that was the start of my healing journey. I kind of went out into the wilderness, made my way back, and then I loved what I was doing, but one of the things that frustrated me was this kind of masking that would go on in the leadership world that, yeah, well, I can't really show up like that in work. I wouldn't want to be showing emotion or anything like that. And then, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016, and it made me step back and think, how do I want to go forward? So I retrained even though I was a trained coach, I retrained as a life coach because I really wanted to empower the leadership in people's lives. And it was through that I got introduced to this idea of circle. I had never heard of women's circle. And that would have been around about 2019. I had never heard of it. But something just grabbed me, called me, and very unlike me, I just sent out a message really quickly and said to people, I'm thinking about creating these spaces to bring women together, because I realized, oh, wow, all along I have been trying to teach people feminine energy leadership, not just women, men, but all of a sudden I wanted to work with women to really bring that out, but bring it out of us. So I kind of got called to it. I know it sounds maybe a bit woo-woo, but I really did. I heard, right, you just need to do this. Felt scary to begin with, but every woman that I talked to about it, they were like, oh, I love that. There's nowhere I can go and just be totally me. I've always got mom hat on, business owner, daughter, all those hats on. And so, yeah, that just brought me there. And now I can see that the self-healing journey that I went on and the experiences and skills that I grew on that journey helped me now in circle, because I can sit with women in the darkness, in the vulnerability, in the fear, because I've been there, I've sat in my own. And so it just makes it a privileged place to be.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your own vulnerability with us here. I totally get what you mean about you kind of just feel drawn to something and feel called to do it. And it's never been in your life plan before, because that's basically what's happened to me with doing this podcast, with coaching. It's never something that I said I was going to do. It was never in my life plan. It just felt like I had to. It felt like it was meant to be, and I was just being pulled more and more towards it. And for me, I feel like it's the most fulfilling, rewarding thing I have ever done, because it just feels like it's what I was meant to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that.
So historically, well, at the moment, let me just completely recap on that. So when I was growing up and at school and through most of my life, my view of women with other women kind of felt competitive, kind of felt like you could have friends, but you had to show up in a certain way. And that there was always a part of me that was really worried what people were going to think of me. And had I said the right thing? Was I wearing the right thing? Was I looking the right way? Was I being a good enough mum? Was I being strong enough in the gym? Was I being successful enough? And it all felt like I needed to prove myself all the time. And historically, women supported each other in so many more ways than they currently do now. And they knew the value of collective support and cooperation, and women tended to work together and support each other so much more. How do you feel that this has changed in our patriarchal society nowadays?
Gosh. Do you know, the patriarchy basically waged war on women.
Yes.
And one of the weapons that they used was that, what I call the sisterhood, what you've just identified there, that kind of being with women, but not really feeling 100% safe or secure or trusting that they really had your back, because that's how the patriarchy controlled this powerful feminine energy. They pitted women against each other, so almost like that divide and conquer. And this is going back, generations, and we still kind of carry some of the, I suppose, the wounding of that. And it shows up, the sister wound can show up in so many different ways, but one of them is that competitive thing, that we're in competition with each other. Or even, dim your light a little bit. Don't be too...
Oh, so much.
Yeah.
So much.
You can be that, but don't go too far with that. Don't go too far with thinking that, you're good enough. It can show up, definitely that cattiness, that jealousy. In other words, that jealousy, and women would be the worst at talking about other women. But I think that came from, that's how previous generations had to survive. They had to almost deny their own needs and values and almost throw another sister under the bus for their own survival. And exclusion, my own personal one was exclusion. So again, went through circle, came to understand this sister wound that we're all carrying, at that time when we felt betrayed by other women. And I realized, when I was bullied, when I went to a different school, I was excluded, and I really felt that then difference was a bad thing. So then you start to try and figure out, how do I fit in, but never really feeling that you're fitting in with yourself. There feels like that disconnect in there.
Yes, very much. You hit on a word there that I think really sort of sums it up, is the feeling safe. I never felt safe to be myself. And there was a beautiful speech in the Barbie movie. Did you see it?
Oh, I printed it out because that's what I was going to say. If ever there was a speech that will help you understand what has the patriarchy done to us as women, there you have it. I mean,
if you've got that at the hand, do you want to get out?
Yeah,
brilliant.
I mean, this movie just moved me in so many different ways, and people that I didn't expect it to move. But here we go. So it was America Ferrera's speech, and she said, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. You're so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough." And this is her talking to Barbie. Like, we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much. or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. Never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself in knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know.
Wow. So powerful. So why do you think it is so important for women to hold space for one another? And what does this actually mean?
So we have to unlearn all of that and learn that there is another way. And so we have to create these spaces where we can come together and show up for ourselves and each other, but taking radical self-responsibility for yourself. And so finding a way to realize that just because you and I don't think the same or necessarily feel the same, it doesn't put us in conflict, or it doesn't mean that we can't be in relationship with one another. It's to allow that true you to shine through. And I think that's what holding space and circle is all about. Just giving that place where you can show up just exactly as you are. So you don't all have to think the same or feel the same. One of the things we do when we kick off a circle is we do this thing called stitching in, and it's literally stitching in with however you're feeling, whatever's true and present for you that day, in that moment. And we get everything from I'm anxious, I'm sad, I'm angry, to I'm feeling grateful and joyful, all in the one space. And it's to teach us that just because a sister is in a difficult place at the minute, you don't have to dim your light. And in fact, we light a little candle to show that you light a candle, light your sister's candle, we all shine even more. So there's that to learn, but also we have to figure out what these triggers are. When we're with women, we have to start understanding, why am I being triggered? So one of my big messages in Circle is don't shoot the messenger. Have a look at the trigger, because it will be something from your past, something that perhaps you've learned. It's not who you are, and if you've learned it, you can unlearn it. So that it's that space to practice, to learn, and to embody being that authentic you. Because it's easy to say, but it's, as you mentioned at the start, it's not necessarily easy to do, because we've all this unraveling to do.
So it's accepting that we all have things we shine at and all have things we struggle with, and they can all be different. And that doesn't mean that it's like you already mentioned you're really good at languages and I'm really not, but it doesn't mean you're better than me. It just means that you're good at that, and that's fantastic. And I have other skills and I have other things that I'm good at, and you have things that you struggle with, and I have things that I struggle with, and that's all okay. Yeah. And I don't have to try and compare myself to you. Right. And you don't have to try and compare yourself to me. That we're all allowed to have different likes and dislikes and skills and struggles, and all of that's okay.
Because ironically, I think when we do the comparison, often what we do is compare our weakness or our liability to someone else's strength. Yes. So we're not even comparing like with like.
Yeah. Or So my recovery coach, an incredible woman, and I love her to pieces, Victoria. She's amazing. She's a lot further on in her healing journey and her coaching business than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So if I compared how many clients she has, how successful her business is, to where I am, that would just make me feel bad.
Yeah.
Because, of course, she's in a different place because she's at a different stage of her journey.
Yeah.
And so you can't compare your 1 year to somebody else's 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely not. You're reminding me of, I trained to be an NLP practitioner, and part of the training was a practical piece. And at the end of it, he could see I was really frustrated with myself, and he said, that was good. What's your frustration about? And I goes, oh my God, you do it so
The internet
so
just froze. Hang
gracefully.
on. We're back. Sorry, the internet just froze for a
Oh,
moment.
sorry. Not sure where I was, but he basically, I did the practical and he said it was good, but he could sense my frustration and, unhappiness. He said, what was that about? And I goes, you do it so easy and so, it just seems to flow. And he said, Sharon, I would like to think my 20 years experience counted for something.
Yes.
And he said, just don't push the river. It will flow by itself.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So yeah, we just need to check in with ourselves when we find ourselves comparing us to someone else or what someone's got or where they are in their journey. In fact, I come across this so much with many of my clients. They're like, but I bet all your other clients are doing this much easier. It doesn't matter because everybody is at different stages of their journey, and just check in with yourself. Where you are is exactly where you're meant to be right now.
Totally. And learn it, because I think when you do that, that's why the thing I love about Circle as well, we kind of shut the outside world. There's far too much noise. There's far too much telling us where we should be at, what we should do, and what we should look like. So the fact that we're even sat in Circle, we're facing each other, we're all on the same level physically. There's no hierarchy, because the masculine energy is hierarchy. And we're all there facing each other. And the irony of it all is when you allow yourself to share just where you're at, even if it is different to what you've just said. Number one, we learn from each other's stories. We're like, oh, wow, I learned something there that can really help me just through that person sharing. But also, when you tune in, which the feminine energy is very much a felt energy, it's an intuitive energy, it's within us, but we've been taught to disconnect from it. When you tune into that, you really start to trust yourself, because you're getting in touch with, well, what do I think? If you've been a people pleaser like me, I didn't know what I wanted or needed for so long. I also would buy into the labels that people would give me. So in my 30s, I was not married, no children. So I definitely hadn't followed the traditional path. And so I did think there's something wrong with me, So when people would say, are you not married? I would hear, what's wrong with you? Because that's how I was judging it. So I wasn't living up to this external kind of journey. But and I think that's where I learned about, I didn't know this was feminine energy. I went in here just to stay safe and try and figure it out myself. It's like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? All that kind of self-inquiry, self-reflection. And the more you do that, the more you start to trust yourself and know what's right for you. And then when you can learn self-compassion with that, when you're not where you want to be yet, very powerful word, yet. I use that a lot in Circle. Somebody goes, well, I'm not this. And it's like, it's as though it's definitive, and it's yet. You're still working.
Exactly.
You're becoming it or on becoming it. You can really then, that's when you really start to step fully into your power and claim it back for yourself, because it's there. You've just given it away unintentionally because of the conditioning, all coping mechanisms from childhood, everything, so many different things.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had to start with that I was so disconnected from myself, from any feminine energy, from all my body's signals. I was just living, existing, ticking the boxes that I thought I needed to tick. So I didn't even know how to access my intuition. I didn't know how to access any feminine energy. And I had to start with just instead of, I often had the what's wrong with me? Why can't I be this? Why am I not doing that? I should be this. I should. And I shoulded myself everywhere all the time.
Mm.
And I needed to connect with myself just to say, okay, what do I need right now to feel okay, to feel safe? And I would just literally, I actually set alarms on my phone to just stop and to say to myself, what do I need?
Yeah.
Do I need to rest? Do I need a drink? Do I need to stretch? Do I need connection? Mm-hmm. And just to start asking myself the very basic question of what do I need, and just listening.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the very, very start of starting to try and learn to connect to who I was.
Yes, because we're so used to what everybody saying what they need. So as women, our worth is tied up in meeting other people's needs. So, and I certainly did this. I was definitely a people pleaser. And actually, it took, they kind of say what you resist persists.
Very much so.
Yeah. And when I did get diagnosed with cancer, I remember this lady saying to me when I was in getting ready for all the treatment, she said, Sharon, you'll really have to take care of yourself this year because you'll be in treatment for a year. And I remember thinking, who would have to be told that when you've just been faced with a cancer diagnosis? But the truth of the matter is I still struggled with that. So when people would say, oh, I'd love to come and visit you, even though I was maybe exhausted from the chemotherapy, there was a bit in me, I felt, oh my God, I should, like you talked about the shitty shoulds, I should let them come visit me. It suits them. Never once thinking, but does it suit you? And that's, so I know what you mean about getting back to that basic, but what do I need right now? So first of all, connecting with that before you can even ask for it. That's another step, to ask for it, but you at least need to know for yourself what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when I first took those first steps into, I want to recover, I was then, but it's going to take up time. How will I do the stuff I need to do for my children? How will I do the stuff I need to do for my husband? If I'm sitting down and resting, how am I going to make sure the house is clean and tidy all the time? Mm-hmm. And my mind went in all these things of serving other people and meeting expectations, and how was I going to keep all that up?
Yeah.
Rather than looking at my needs, because I didn't know them. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that I was allowed to have needs.
There you have it. There you have it. Now, there's a big patriarchy. Women were needy. It was seen as a bad thing. You're needy. And so I think we have this conditioning that needs are bad. We shouldn't have them. But every human being on this earth, we all have needs to just to show up as a human being, and particularly in this world where it's non-stop. And so that, I think one of the, things that people would say about the patriarchy, and it's true that there's a lot of progress that has been made in one sense, but then I think there's a little bit of a backlash, and you can't be it all, and you can't even do that. So you're really far off the mark now.
Yes. One thing that I really, really struggled with was I felt that I had to have it all together, or I had to appear externally to have it all together, that to show any form of weakness or any form of vulnerability, any form of not having it together was a weakness.
Yeah.
My children had never even seen me cry, because I never did cry, because to me that was a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And also it was partly from childhood conditioning and stuff like that, and being told off for crying. But I always thought that I had to show that I was a very capable person, and I got validated for that hugely. People were like, oh, I don't know how you do everything you do. You're amazing.
Yeah.
And that made me feel like what I was doing was right.
Yeah.
And the thought of saying the hardest word you will ever say to anybody terrified me.
Yeah.
And the thought of just saying, I need help, was the hardest thing I'd ever said.
Yeah.
So how do you feel that showing vulnerability to others is actually a strength rather than a weakness?
I think it's because you're starting to take back control, because the shame and the guilt that, of in your head thinking about uttering those words, or saying, I don't have it all together the way you all think. That shame and guilt can get hold of you then, and they love that, because as long as they can feed the shame and the guilt gets fed, then it's controlled. And so by uttering kind of the unutterable, if there's such a word, and then the world not falling down around you, and somebody there, and this is the beauty of Circle. In Circle, we do not give advice. We do not give feedback. When we're sharing, the person shares from their truth. And we do this thing, which I struggled with in the beginning, called the beam. So when the sister had finished her share, we're just kind of beaming her to show we see you, we hear you, we feel you. And then from there, because you're not getting that backlash, then, now I can really start to look in. No, nothing happened. Nobody rejected me. Nobody, said, get out of this group. I can't believe you're not perfect. And all of a sudden you start to realize, wow, so much could actually be born out of this vulnerability, because it creates such deep connection, not only with yourself, because you're starting to own your whole truth, not just the nice bits.
For those who are listening and not watching the video, Sharon just held her hands up as though she was beaming lights from the palms of her hands to shine her light on other people. Just for those who are not watching the video.
Oh, thank you for that.
We have listeners and watchers, so it's all good. So allowing yourself to be vulnerable, it's actually quite ironic, really, because even when I never allowed myself to show any vulnerability, it brought me so much, joy is probably the wrong word, fulfillment, to be given the privilege of helping somebody else. And I think most of us want to help people. Most of us love to feel that we are able to help lift somebody else.
For sure. That's part of our own healing, I think, as well. That you can just show someone that they're not alone. It's really courageous to say you're not perfect. And here's the thing, there's no such a thing as a perfect life, because it's the price, we struggle. It's the price of being human. We struggle. And so there is no perfect life. We joked at the beginning, or said about imperfect. I don't know if we're perfectly imperfect or imperfectly perfect, whatever it is, we are that. That is the price of being human. And so when someone feels safe enough to tell you their truth, and it maybe be the first time they've actually said it out loud to themselves, I just think you do earn someone's vulnerability, and it is a privilege if someone feels that they can be vulnerable with you.
And when each time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we're actually giving somebody else a permission slip to say, actually, I need help too.
Yeah. That role modeling it's so key, because, as you say, it empowers them as well, and that's why I love that we don't give feedback in circle or advice. Do you know what? There's enough of that. No, if a sister said, I really need help with something, we'd all be there for her. And we would say, we wouldn't tell her what to do. We might say, well, if I were in your situation, this is what I'm thinking. So she's getting that lovely benefit of the woman co-creating. We're not telling each other what to do. We're just sharing to see if there's something that might work for you or might help.
Well, how would it feel if you looked at it from a different angle? Yeah. How would this angle feel to you?
Yeah.
So, yeah, amazing. So I think we've probably just actually answered my next question, which is, how do women's circles create a safe yet challenging environment for personal growth and expansion? Do you have any more to say on that than you already said?
I think partly the physical setup, as I said, partly the process. I have a structure for my circle, so people get to realize we'll stitch in, we'll do a bit of a meditation, an opening meditation, we'll have a theme that we're going to explore around, and it's really about looking to empower yourself or take the lead for yourself, and then and sometimes that's dipping into the, well, what's really holding you back? What's your real truth type thing? So that structure kind of gives people a sense of safety, and they know what's happening. But safety doesn't mean comfortable, we have to go to the edge of our comfort zone. And that's all I ask women to do, I'm not trying to take you right out into the panic zone, because if you go too far, you just shut down.
There's no growth in the panic zone.
There's no growth. So just push that edge a little bit, push it a little bit. And in pushing that, you start to realize, oh, wow, I can do more than I thought, like, is it Winnie the Pooh, or somebody said you're braver, stronger, smarter than you even think? And it's so true. I mean, most of when you can alchemize that pain through through processing, and definitely what I'd say in circle is, we don't need to go it alone. I think women were out there trying to do that, but they were still missing that thing that's really important to us, as you said, women always being together, and helping each other. When you process that and then turn that into a strength and something then that you can actually help others with, or really reclaim what you want for yourself in life, it's just so powerful. And that's what we're always trying to do. And it's not all unicorns and puppy dogs.
I actually haven't seen any unicorns and puppy dogs there.
They do say in the feminine energy, they talked about the heroine's journey. kind of, we were following the hero's journey, you know, doing it all, get to the top of the mountain, and then we go, is that it? Because it wasn't enough for us. So
Yes.
we descend down into this, oh wow, what more could there be? And the deeper we descend, the higher we ascend. But, you know, sometimes I like to think of a lot of people, and I'm sure it's probably true for you, not to put words in your mouth, that when we hit that rock bottom moment, it can also be a springboard into
Yes.
the way back up again. Because if you think about it, even in construction terms, I'm not a builder, but I imagine hitting rock bottom, they think, right, okay, we can build from here.
It's almost like, for me, I kind of visualize it as that I had been wandering around in a maze for years, decades, and keeping on, not like, I'll be happy when, and then it's dead end, and the happy's not there. And so I turn and I go another direction. I'll be happy when, and then I hit another dead end in the maze. And I kind of view my rock bottom as the day I came out of the maze.
Yeah.
And there was this whole new world, this whole fresh start, this chance to step into the sunshine and just start to see the light, to start to follow the light, and to start to accept that the I'll be happy when never ever worked. And so I could look every day now at where I am today, and what of where I am can I be happy about today?
Yeah.
Because there is no destination for happy.
No.
It's a choice to have every single day on your journey.
Yeah.
And the journey is just life.
Totally. I mean, I love that there's no destination, because that's, you know, our ego mind likes to control, doesn't it? It's like, so right, if there's a destination, I can say, and then I know if we're going towards it or away from it. And actually, but if we can let go of all that, it's a bit like, you don't have to tell a flower how to grow, it just grows. It's that natural intelligence that we have. But, you know, today's society, the patriarchy, it's kind of has us thinking that we're in control, and it's actually, we're not. We absolutely are not. No one knows. Now, that doesn't mean to say you just go, you know, some people say to me, oh, will you teach me how to manifest, and then, you know, I can have whatever. And it's like,
and then I'll be happy.
Yeah, and then I'll be happy. Yeah, it's like you still have to show up and manifest, and the universe doesn't do all the work. You have to put your bit in. But yeah, it's like just being able to surrender to where you are right in this moment, and recognize maybe what you need to let go of. They are healing journeys as well. I wouldn't have known that word's become more, you know, in vogue sort of thing, but I realized for me, healing is just like recognizing a lot of the patterns, a lot of the triggers, and trying to do something about them. And it's not one and done. We can still get triggered.
Practice. Absolutely. And I think it's also accepting that, I mean, in life, right, everything you've done this morning, everything I've done this morning, I have got in my car and driven. Now, I could not have created that car by myself. I could not have learned to drive by myself. I've made a cup of tea, but I didn't design the kettle and the electricity and stuff. So in our daily lives, we use things that other people have helped us with in every aspect of our life.
Absolutely.
And so it's accepting that actually our own journeys, our own healing journeys, we don't have to do that alone either. It's okay and necessary to have help. We can't do everything alone. We only know what we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and to share with other people and allow others to help us, which is hard.
Yeah, it
You
is.
think you need to do it yourself.
Yeah. Because particularly if you have this narrative in your head that to ask for help is weak, is it an admission of your failure, whatever that might be, that story. So we're kind of getting control of the narratives and for ourselves, because a lot of them will have come from a time where survival, we were learning coping mechanisms to survive. So they would have looked after us at a time. I'll give you an example, like when my boyfriend had been killed, and for a long time, didn't matter what I was going through, I would say, is it as bad as that? And of course it wasn't, but I would use that as my barometer for being able to take something on. But it actually got to a point where I was making myself sick because of that thinking. I was just focused on work. I didn't have the fuller life that I was looking for. I loved my job, so that it wasn't all bad, but it was all coming from work. And no matter what I faced, it was like, is it as bad as that? And then one day I realized that is not a helpful thing for me to ask myself anymore, because the answer is always going to be no.
And it's denying yourself the ability to feel your feelings and be in that moment, which is also very much like an eating disorder, because and nobody asks for an eating disorder. Nobody creates an eating disorder just for the fun of it. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way of getting a feeling of being in some form of control of your life when you don't feel that everything else is.
Yeah.
So it's a way, it serves you. It really does serve you. It serves a purpose, and it's very, very helpful until it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the difficulty is to let go of that feeling of safety that it used to bring you.
Yes.
And recognizing that it no longer serves you.
Yeah. It's more destructive in your life now. And so needing to find another way.
And we all had reasons for the things we do and have done. But it's a case of now looking at them and saying, do they still serve me in the same way? And is there another way that is going to be better, that is going to allow me to be who I am now? Because we change through our lives all the time. Our circumstances change, but we often hold on to the old narrative and still live that whilst trying to live in a different place. And that's when the clash happens.
Yeah, definitely. If somebody like someone says to you, you've changed, and they almost say it as though it's a bad thing. Always
like an accusation.
Yeah, I encourage people to say thank you. We're supposed to.
Yes, we are supposed to. And our bodies are supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, none of us look like we did when we were born or when we were 7 years old.
Yeah.
And a teenager is a different body from a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old. And you don't see somebody at 80 years old that looks like they did at 20. And yet we're not supposed to age. We're not supposed to have these wrinkles. We're not supposed to change in any way. We're fighting nature.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah, it's when you stop and think about it, we don't have any difficulty in realizing how crazy it is to even think like that. And yet we do.
And we still feel like we need to meet these societal expectations that somehow what we look like and how much money we have and how nice our house is and our car is means something about us.
That it says something about you. And that was the irony, I think, of the road to circle. I would be coaching these leaders, top leaders in organizations, and they'd be getting coached on life. I had a man once tell me, right, listen, there isn't anything you'll be able to teach me in terms of running the business, which I was grateful for, because I was thinking it was bringing out my imposter syndrome. Who the hell am I to be stood in front of this guy coaching him? He said, you have to coach me to get back into relationship with my wife and my family.
So you get all these, you meet all the expectations and the happy isn't there. Hey, that's the thing.
The money was there, the big job, the big house, the cars, but actually, and that's the wonderful thing about self-awareness, the power in it, that he was humble, vulnerable enough to turn around and say, this is what I really need help with.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So what do you feel it actually means to love yourself wholly and unconditionally from the inside out?
I think for me, what that means is the holy is as in WHOLLY, just in case anybody thinks I mean
Not with holes in.
I think it's just to accept all of you, your gifts, your liabilities, your strengths, your weaknesses, your blind spots, kind of you on a bad day. So all of that, but also the journey you've been on, accepting that what did you learn from that? What did that give you? What has that brought you to? Because so much of when we look back, and certainly for me, but the toughest times were when we actually learned the most. But we need to be able to embrace that and hold on to that. And the unconditional thing is not letting yourself off the hook. The unconditional thing is really saying, it's almost that idea of, I love you and I don't have to like your behavior sometimes. It's like you will never have to beg for your own love. You love the person wholly and unconditionally, and you can call yourself out on what it is that you need to do differently. So the unconditional piece, there's a radical self-honesty in there as well.
I guess it's a bit like, I love my dogs. I love my dogs so much. And there's nothing they do that stops me from loving them. However, I really don't like them when they roll in fox poo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still love them, but I really don't like that.
Yeah.
And I love who I am. I don't necessarily like everything I do. I make mistakes and I don't like that, but I'm human and that's okay. I'll still love who I am. And instead of telling myself that I'm useless and rubbish and a waste of space, I'm like, oh, sweetheart, that was not your proudest moment.
Yeah.
We can learn from this.
Absolutely. That's it. That self-compassion, that compassion, that love that you would give someone else and that compassion that you would give someone else in that place, being able to turn that towards yourself. And self-compassion is not all softy marshmallow. It's about acknowledging the struggle that you're feeling, acknowledging the humanity of that. Wow, anybody trying to relearn how to eat differently or whatever it might be, is going to need time to come back into that. And so
there's going to be failures. There's going to be things that go wrong.
Yeah, and allowing space for that, like you would your best friend. I sometimes do like little sessions on self-compassion, and I tell them it's a superpower, and I know they've got it, and then essentially ask them, right, I want you to think about a best friend, that's been through some kind of struggle recently, and how you were with them and how you spoke to them and what you did for them. And then I want you to now think about yourself recently going through some struggle. How were you with yourself? How did you talk to yourself? And ask them, hands up if there was a difference between how you treated your friend and how you treated yourself. 90% of people, hands up.
Yeah. I think we learn probably from our parents. My mum was never nice to herself. She always oh, I should be this, I should be that. She would look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm not looking good today. And I learned that from watching others. And I modeled that to my children.
Yeah.
And it just goes generation after generation. And we see it on the TV all the time.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. And that self-compassion, that's a practice as well.
Very much so.
And just by starting to notice, what have I just said to myself? What am I not allowing there? I'm not allowing me to fail. I'm not allowing me to make a mistake. I'm not allowing me to learn. You're actually depriving yourself of a lot when you don't learn the practice of self-compassion and know that sometimes it does mean you call yourself in and say, you know what, you need to take some action here. You've been feeling that for a while.
And when you say, you stupid idiot, to yourself, then say, hey, hang on, I didn't deserve that. I didn't mean to spill the drink. So noticing it and just saying, actually, I didn't deserve to speak to myself like that.
Yeah. Catching yourself and
noticing it. Because in the beginning, when you start the process of self-compassion, you're going to still, that inner bitch, that inner critic is still going to be there. And it's a case of just noticing and saying, hang on a minute, that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, I think that self-compassion thing is like, it is good to ask yourself, well, what would I say to my best friend right now? Would I say the same? And you'd be you wouldn't. You would know exactly what words to say to help them be in that moment. And so that's a good practice, just to go, well, right, okay, I've just said that. If I was going to be my own best friend, what would I say right now? And also that comparison thing comes into it as well. I think if you're going to compare, use it for inspiration. If you feel some kind of envy, use it as inspiration for, wow, that really, I feel a bit of envy there, but maybe if I just see that as inspiration, how can I use that to inspire me to do or have or be who I want to be?
I think one of the most powerful things in my journey was when I realized, when I was starting to work with self-compassion and I was looking at the way I was treating myself and I had treated myself, I realized that if I had treated one of my children like that, I'd have been put in prison.
Yeah.
It was so bad. It was abuse. It was torture. It was appalling.
Yeah.
And yet I treated myself like that every single day.
Yeah. Because there was a time where that probably felt that was protecting you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I know you do women's circles in person because I come to them.
Yeah.
But you also do them online as well, don't you?
Yeah.
How can people work with you?
So basically, there's three ways: in circle person, in circle online, and one-on-one coaching. So through Eventbrite, I position all my circles on Eventbrite, but there's in Southbourne and Christchurch here locally.
Which is in the south of England.
England. Thank you. And oftentimes what happens is when people come to Circle and they start that journey and they start to really connect with themselves and think, oh, wow, things could be really different here, then they maybe work with me one-on-one, which tends to be like 3 months or 6 months sessions. So yeah, and that's mainly how people work with me, one-on-one or in circle, and they're all just published via my Instagram and stuff like that. You probably
okay. Well, we'll put all the links to that in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. And is there anything that I haven't asked, or more that you'd like to share before we wrap up this episode? What would you like people to take away from this?
I think what I would like you to know, what people to know, is you have such a well of power within you, and you may not feel it, but we all have it. And when you can make the journey inwards, out of the head and down to the heart, it's only 6 inches or something like that, but it's the hardest journey you'll ever make. But boy, will it be worth it. And find that place. Should it be one-on-one? Should it be in a circle? Should it just be a friend, where you can start to access that for yourself? Because that's how you heal, by turning inwards. I think everybody at some stage needs to turn in and figure out who I am. And that's why I call it, that almost like a pilgrimage home to yourself. It's who you were before the world got hold of you.
Coming home to self-love.
Yeah. And really coming home to that place. And that circle is just this. I would love it to be like a yoga class, that people would think of it just as as much as part of their well-being. And a decade ago, not everyone would have considered yoga to be a mainstream practice. So I'd love to see Women's Circle be in that place, because we can start creating these spaces for ourselves again, because we did lose that space, and not just because of the patriarchy. And I suppose that the last thing I would say, and this is kind of what I talk about when the thriving with grit and grace, the grit is, I think you've got 3 choices in life. It can destroy you, define you, or strengthen you. The grit is really not allowing those first 2 to win out, to ultimately for it to strengthen you. But that is a process. It's not saying, oh, come on, you've got 3 choices, which one do you want to make? And I think the grace piece is having the grace to love yourself, to be kind to yourself, to be compassionate to yourself and others when it's tough.
Beautiful. Sharon, thank you so, so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. You are absolutely incredible and an inspiration to many.
Thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. When you put it out there, I was like, oh! But I just said yes, and I'm so grateful that you did ask me. And I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Amazing. And thank you so much to all the listeners. I love you all, and just sending you a massive hug and so much love and compassion today. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.